Hello, Lenawee County. I'm Bryan Vish, and this is Civic Voices, where I sit down with the folks who are shaping our community. Today, I'm joined in studio by Stephen Kiersey, and he is a director, educator, and a familiar face in the Michigan theater scene. He is the creative force behind the Croswell's production of Anastasia, which is opening this Friday, May 9th, in downtown Adrian. Stephen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, what drew you to Anastasia? Why this story and why now?
Well, that might be a better question for Jerry Ryder. She's the one who programmed the show a year ago, and then asked me to direct it. And I had seen the production in the national tour, and I thought, well, this will be an interesting challenge. I'll take it on.
Oh, well, how would you describe the vision for this show? Are there any specific tones or themes that you guys are hoping to emphasize?
Well, it's an interesting play the way it's constructed because it's realistic, but it's also has a lot of old-fashioned musical comedy aspects to it. And it's also done very cinematically because it is based on an animated feature. And so they've kept some of those cinematic elements where two or three things are happening on stage at the same time, but not necessarily in the same space.
So, like a non-linear kind of experience.
Well, the whole story is linear, but some of the scenes are non-linear, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And that kind of blends into my next question because it is, a fantasy that's based on history.
Correct.
So, how do you strike that balance?
Well, it is based on a real event. The Romanov family was arrested in 1917, and then a year later they were all executed, which put an end to the Romanov dynasty and ushered in the Bolshevik Revolution. And interestingly enough, when I had done some research, after the death of the Romanovs, their bodies were not buried publicly, but there had been people that had come forth over the years claiming that they had escaped the assassins' bullets and that they were Anastasia or other members, and of course all of those were debunked. It wasn't until the 1970s that the actual bodies of the Romanovs were discovered, and they began to do some DNA on that, and it was kept secret until the Soviet Union fell. And then they were the bodies of the family. Actually, to go back, I guess, not only the Tsar, the Tsarina, and their 5 children, including Anastasia, were killed, but they also killed 4 servants and their doctor with them. So it was quite a bloodbath, I guess, if you will. In the 90s, I might have the dates wrong, but after their bodies were discovered and proven to be the bodies of the Romanovs, all except 2, they were interred in the I can't think of the Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg.
Okay.
And I had the privilege of being in Russia in 2003, and I went to the cathedral and I saw their tombs there, and it was amazing and sad, but after all that time, after 80 some years had passed, there were still ordinary Russian citizens there, reaching out and touching their tombs, laying flowers, weeping. It definitely is part of the Russian. I call it the ghost of the Russians' past. So yes, the real Anastasia did not survive. However, our musical picks up with the idea that perhaps here's a young woman who doesn't know who she is. She has amnesia, and so she's the right age. And she falls in with 2 con men who want to escape Russia and come up with the idea that we'll teach her to be the real Anastasia, get her to Paris, introduce her to her grandmother, and we'll win a hefty sum of money and we'll all live happily ever after. Of course, complications ensue.
Yes. If I remember, there was a bat involved in the cartoon. I remember the cartoon from when I was a kid. That was one of the characters that always kind of stuck out with me was Rasputin's bat.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but he's no longer in the musical.
Oh, darn it!
There are two major differences. I've not seen the cartoon. I'm glad you called it a cartoon.
It was a cartoon. Yeah.
I've always called it a cartoon, but other people have corrected me that it's an animated feature.
If you want to get technical, yes, I did go to film school, and it is an animated feature film. However, colloquially, cartoon.
And it's not a Disney.
No, it wasn't. It was a very good film.
But Rasputin, who is the villain in the cartoon, is not in the musical, and the bat is not in the musical as well. And nor is Anastasia's dog, which I guess was also part of the cartoon.
Yes, she was. Or he
Not,
was.
Not in the musical.
Okay.
So the musical actually kind of, that's where the realism comes in.
Okay.
The musical kind of goes for more of a realistic portrayal of these people, that this young girl who doesn't know who she is, she has amnesia. We don't know she doesn't know what happened to her. She has no memory of her life prior to waking up in a hospital. And the nurses called her Anya. And then what we see is the con men teaching her to become Anastasia, and they eventually get to Paris and they get to the Dowager Empress and try to convince her that this is the real Anastasia.
So, as we're looking at this kind of production, because obviously it sprawls across Russia into Europe, a lot of different places. Were there any challenges or opportunities that you saw in adapting the show for a stage like the Croswell?
It's a huge show. It's a huge show with a lot of moving parts. The first act actually takes place in Russia. The play begins with a prologue, which familiarizes the audience with the royal family and 6-year-old Anastasia, the real royal family, and shows their capture. And then it moves ahead to 1917 with the teenage Anastasia and her family, and then it moves to 1927 Paris.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, 1927 Leningrad, because St. Petersburg is now renamed Leningrad, and we see the darkness of the Bolshevik Revolution and the downtrodden people, and that introduces us to these two con men who cook up this scheme to find a girl that we can train to be Anastasia and win a lot of money if we can convince the Dowager. Act 2, so all of Act 1 shows that struggle of them finding Anya, them befriending her, them teaching her all the things that she needs to know, and getting special papers to get on a train out of Russia into France. And then at the end of Act 1, they actually arrive in France. And now in Act 2, we're in Paris. Total change of color, total change of mood. And now we see the struggle with the Dowager Empress who believes that her granddaughter didn't survive. Yeah. And now being confronted with this young girl who may or may not be her granddaughter.
So, you mentioned the Bolsheviks obviously was the whole setup for that incident occurring.
Correct.
And, I'm actually kind of connected in a certain way because my family came over here from the Slavic region, from Poland, in 1917.
Oh.
My great-great-grandfather came through Ellis Island. So it's in a obviously very dark period where people were fleeing out because of the unrest. So are there any moments in the show that you feel are especially, timely or resonate personally?
Well, there is. We do see some of the things in the opening of the play where people are taken off the street because they don't have the right papers. We see a person of royalty, especially because any of the aristocracy, they were definite targets of the communists, the Bolsheviks, and we see a little bit of that. But the play is not really about that. The play is really about characters having to deal with the ghosts of their past.
Okay.
And Anya, our lead character, her ghost is she doesn't know who she is. Maybe she is the real Anastasia. She doesn't even know for sure herself. And what she's really searching for is a home. She wants to find a home and to be loved. Dmitri, one of the con men, his ghost is he really is an orphan. He wants to get out of Russia. He doesn't really believe in the aristocracy, but he doesn't really believe in the Bolshevik Revolution either. So he's kind of in no man's land. He wants to get out and get on to a better life. And of course, in true musical theater fashion, he will fall in love with Anya and she with him. And then the Dowager Empress, she left Russia prior to the revolution, went to Paris, and then was in Paris when it happened. So she was kind of separate from it. But she's living with a ghost of her whole family was annihilated. And she misses them, and she misses her granddaughter, and she is dealing with that. So she has a wonderful line that she says to Anya about, because Anya is like, I don't know who I am. And the Dowager says to her, you'll never know who you are until you discover who you really are. And so that's kind of what the play's about. I don't want to make it sound like it's doom and gloom, however, because it is not.
No. What I was about to actually was kind of thinking about in terms of themes is it almost seems like the story is while it's intentionally set on this extreme type of backdrop because it's showing, as you said, the ghosts of the past of each character. While it's the ghosts of what happens when we allow ourselves to fall into that type of darkness, and because it divides, it splits, and you see everybody, I'm trying to flee, I'm trying to find who I am, I lost my family. So it kind of creates a really more wholesome story, I feel, in that kind of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think just like the characters in the play, all of us in real life have ghosts in our pasts that we have to come to terms with in order to move on and achieve the dreams that we want to. The musical is very much a fairy tale in a sense.
Absolutely.
And we want it to end happily ever after, but we want, the fairy tale of our lives is the same.
Yeah.
We want to live happily ever after.
We want the fantasy as well.
Right.
We want to be able to think that maybe we could survive and overcome.
Right.
It's that glimmer of hope.
And this is what we're all hoping for. We want to overcome our ghosts of the past so that we can live happily ever after.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we do.
Well, from what I saw on the cast list, it looks like you're working with a mix of seasoned performers and emerging talent. So can you tell me, how did you create a cohesive ensemble out of that?
Well, we had 5 separate auditions. 3 of them were in Adrian, and 1 was in Toledo, and 1 was in Ann Arbor. These were held way back at the end of January and February. And then I don't even remember how many people auditioned, over 100 people. And then I went kind of through and with my team, Sarah Nowak is the choreographer, and Gabriel Hagedorn is the musical director. And so the 3 of us, looking at all of these people, kind of said, well, this would be good for this, and then we called them all back, and then we had a callback audition where we narrowed it down to the final people that we cast in the roles. And we end up now, I think we originally had a cast of 42. We're down to 38 now. So we have a cast of 38. It's a fairly large
ensemble.
Cast. Yes, it is. Yes.
With a cast that size, how have they responded to the emotional depth and the musical range of the production?
Really well. I mean, this is a great group of people to work with. They come from all over. Some are from Adrian, Lenawee County. We have some people from Ohio. We have 2 actors coming from, I believe it's Canton, Michigan, to be in the show. So they're coming from all over. They have embraced the story. A lot of theater people love this musical and wanted to be a part of it, which I think that's why it brought out so many people also to come and audition. although they weren't just auditioning for Anastasia, because our auditions were for all 4 summer shows at the same time.
Okay, gotcha.
And we began rehearsal process kind of talking about the historical aspects of the show, and then working with the principals. We've they've developed really nice characters,
Nice.
and they're fun to watch, and they're wonderful to listen to. They all have great songs, and they sing really well, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful score to this show as well.
So were there any like aha moments during the rehearsals with like a scene or a character kind of just started clicking?
Well, my biggest aha moment was we hadn't cast the 2 young people in the play that play the little Anastasia and Alexei, her brother, in the opening prologue.
Mhm.
Those auditions were held beginning of middle of April, actually. And so we would run those scenes without an actor there. And it was like, okay, well, yeah, we can hardly wait till we get Alexei and the real Anastasia here. And then we cast them and brought them in for the first time. They've only been rehearsing with us about a little over a week. And the first rehearsal, they knew their lines already. They came in knowing their lines. And it was just all of a sudden, those scenes just came to life.
It was like it was meant to be.
And
Yeah.
touching and beautiful. That opening scene between the 6-year-old Anastasia and her grandmother is, we start off with a very touching moment in the show, and both of them play it so beautifully.
Excellent. So, how do you see the Croswell's role in both Adrian and Lenawee counties, broader art community?
Well, I like to think we are the premier theater company in Lenawee County. We're producing shows from February through December. Our biggest part of our season, however, of course, is the May through December, actually May through September.
Okay.
But we still do 2 shows beyond that. So,
Yeah.
and they're all musicals. That seems to be what people want to see. They love musicals. People love musicals.
They have made a big comeback in a big way the past few years. So, yeah.
Who doesn't love a musical?
I was a film major. I had, a lot of friends who were theater majors, and it was a constant sing along in the apartments because they were any like pop song, a musical, it didn't matter. And especially once they, because when I was at Western, they did what was it, Rocky Horror.
Okay.
And so all my friends were running around singing Time Warp. And I'm like, it was a really fun time just because of that.
So I think we're a great training ground for actors. We cast a wide group of people. Like I said, we have 38 people in this show.
Yeah.
Some of them, not all of them, it's their first show, but there are a few that it is their first show.
Yeah.
So we provide a good training ground for new actors. We provide a great place for seasoned actors to show their chops and show what they can do, and provide a nice entertainment for the community.
Excellent. Well, so now I'm kind of wondering if you could take the audience back a bit and tell us how you got into directing. Was there any particular show or moment that really lit that spark?
Well, I'm originally from Adrian, and I began my first show at the Croswell was when I was in high school in 1968, and we did West Side Story. I was a freshman in high school, but at that time, the high school had no auditorium, and the Croswell had just been purchased because it was going to be torn down to build a parking lot there, but it had been purchased, and so it was going to be saved. We saved the Croswell, and it was going to be part of it was through a joint effort with the Adrian Public Schools that was going to become the auditorium space for the Adrian Public Schools. So we did West Side Story there, and I remember going in there. I was 15, 16 years old, and it was filthy because it had been a movie theater for 40 some years. And then they started doing the summer shows there in the summer, and I took part in those. And that kind of began my journey loving theater. and so because I did shows all through high school, and then I did shows in the summer at the Croswell, and then I went to college and majored in theater and focused mostly on acting. And then I got my master's degree from Michigan State, and I um, just started hiring myself out to community theaters all over the state, directing and acting, and that's kind of how it grew.
You kind of just
And
organically became a thing.
And I've been doing it ever since.
Hey, those are the best kinds of careers, though. You grow into it, and it just kind of
Right.
becomes what you do.
Well, and I also became a teacher because acting and directing does not pay the bills. So I had to have a day job, and so I became a teacher, and part of my job always as a teacher was to take charge of the drama programs. Mm-hmm. At the schools where I taught, and so I ran those programs where I again directed, designed, did everything, working with my students to create 3 shows a year at our school. And so now I'm retired and I'm still doing it.
Well, I mean, even still being balanced, I'm sure there's a balancing act that has to take place with this. So, how do you balance your artistic ambition with practical things like time, money, or cast availability?
It's very difficult. And I wanted to, I'm retired and I don't want to just sit at home and watch Netflix all day, which is very easy to do. I want to stay active. I want to be active. I want to be a part of the community. But it is always it is a balancing act, trying to because taking on this project at the same time, I'm now an adjunct in the theater department at Adrian College, and I'm also directing the show with the Adrian Shakespeare Company. And all 3 of those things kind of happened all at the same time in March, and I was tearing out whatever hair I had left because it was like, whoa, Nellie, I'm retired, and here I'm working more than I was when I was working. But things work out, and you just push through it. And I would rather be. I think I would rather be doing that than doing nothing.
Absolutely. So, what do you hope audiences walk away with after seeing Anastasia?
Well, I think they're going to be. The phrase that comes to mind is a phrase I hate, but I think they're going to feel all the feels.
Feel all the feels?
Because the show, there are serious moments.
Yes.
There's romance. There's funny moments. So it's got a little bit of everything. There's great singing. The ensemble has some great musical numbers, choral songs that they sing, which are knockout. There's great dancing. There's something for everybody in the show. I don't want people to think from our earlier conversation that it's a dark, gloomy, because it's certainly not dark and gloomy at all. Whilst there are some of those shadows in the show, perhaps, there is something for everybody. It is a show that is highly entertaining, and I think anybody that comes to the theater to see it will go away very entertained and feeling all the feels. Isn't that what the young people say?
I was supposed to say, it's a very millennial phrase for this there, feeling all the feels.
Well, I hear people say that, and I hate that.
I get the feels.
Here I'm using it. Go figure.
So, as we've kind of getting to the end of this, what is next for you after Anastasia wraps? Are there any future projects or passions?
Yes. 4 weeks after Anastasia closes, I will begin rehearsals for Much Ado About Nothing for the Adrian Shakespeare Company.
Excellent.
And so we've already had our auditions. That was one of the things that was going on in March. So we've had our auditions. Our show is cast, and we start rehearsals the 16th of June, I believe. And
excellent.
So that will take me through June, July, and then the first weekend in August.
Very cool. So I remember at Much Ado About Nothing. Because I actually went to Schoolcraft originally, and I was in the theater program there.
Okay.
And that was one of the plays that they were having us read through, and that was one I always enjoyed. So.
Very funny show, and I'd be very happy to come back and talk to you about that sometime.
Absolutely, I would love to, because I like his comedy. The Shakespeare comedies are always really good and sharp. So.
Yes, and this is a very funny play.
Yes, it is. So, Well, Stephen, thank you very much for joining me today here with Civic Voices. My name is Bryan Vish, and I hope all of you check out Anastasia starting this Friday, May 9th, in downtown Adrian at the Croswell.